So we're going to be looking at our sitting cat sort of shape, and if you want to draw a cat, it's really, when you see them from behind, what you really see is almost just like three circles, one on top of the other, getting sort of slightly bigger as they go down. So if you wanted to do a pencil outline first to kind of build up to the pen, then what you could do is to use sort of like to draw first three kind of blob shapes and then put them together into a cat body. So just, you know, when you think I've got a pencil and then you realise that that's the one thing you didn't put out, and somehow every pencil you've ever had in your life has now run away laughing at you. Right, here's my pencil. So it's quite useful to kind of plan our cat drawing to do these blobs first so we can get the cat in, because we want to make sure we can get the nice curly tail in at the bottom. So I'm going to fit my three circles sort of in the top 2/3. Let me just tilt my camera up a little bit. Of the paper so I can leave room for the tail. If by chance you find you've come too far down, there's not a lot of tail room, you can always tuck the tail around the side, so it's not essential to worry too much about that. But it's going to be a bit like drawing a sort of kid snowman to begin with. So you do roughly a sort of circle at the top like that, and then you're going to do a slightly bigger circle underneath, so you've got sort of two segments there, and then you're going to do the third one, and this circle is slightly flattened at the bottom because it's a bottom that's being sat on. They're almost a bit like a guitar shape. I sort of feel they have like that sense of that sort of like an instrument sort of shape. So I hope that's not too faint and you can see it okay. But once you've got that sort of the three circles in, then you can slightly soften the shape and sort of start joining them together, so you can join an edge like that, so that's the sort of neck, and then he's got shoulders and comes round to that sort of bottom shape at the bottom, and you can see how that's just starting to look sort of like a cross between a bowling ball, sort of a bowling skittle, doesn't it, that's sort of swallowed something. And then once you start getting a pair of ears in, and you can decide how huge an ear you want your cat to have. He might be one of those ones with the very long and elegant ears. It might be something sort of fatter and shorter. Once you get the ears in at the top, that might look a little bit like devil horns. Let's try that again. I'm going to give it slightly more of a curve. That's better. It needs to have a curve on the outside. That's it, going away. That's better. And then a curve coming down like that. So that sort of starts to look much more like a cat because we've put in those ears there. And then with the bottom, imagine, because it's sitting on a base, that can really flatten out quite a long way. And then we've got a tail that's going to come down and do its thing somewhere around here, and that's just a long sort of curly shape. And I'm not going to put too much of a curl on it, but you can do lovely things like, you know, you can do two cats side by sides and sort of have their tails linked together. That's quite a famous image that people often read. And you might want to just put a little bit of a indication of a sort of hip in like that. But that's then the cat. Quite a simple drawing, but it just immediately we can see that's now our simple sort of cat outline. And of course we can put on some flamboyant whiskers coming up, but we'll do those in pen, so they're sort of like, you know, because you want those big bushy kind of whiskers. So that's our very basic sort of cat drawing. Thinking again about the fur direction of the cat, as I was saying when we were looking at the source material earlier, he's got a spine down here and the fur is all pointing down that way, and then it sort of spreads out and down, so it sort of comes from the middle of the spine and then out and down, sort of like this on each sort of side. Now my cat has chosen to appear. I was going to get him to make a star performance, but he's not having it. I think I'm just going to slightly move that in a bit, and then so when we do our patterning, we're going to think about how we're going to place it. So all the pattern's going to be kind of having that sort of downwards direction, which will make sort of sense in a bit. But obviously once you've got all the pen work in, the last thing you can do is go back and rub out all the pencil if you want to, depending on how much shows through. So I'm not going to draw the outline of the cat in pen. I'm going to just start mapping out our doodle areas first, and we'll see, because it might be quite nice to leave this outline to take it into a kind of fuzziness. If I show you quickly on a spare piece of paper, which one never has when one says this, But what I'm talking about is if you've got an outline, if you're using pen, if you've got a hard outline, that's obviously like, you know, a sort of strong kind of cartoon edge outline. But what you can do is, instead of drawing an outline in, you can build up an outline out of little tiny marks like that, little sort of lines. And that's still, the base of your lines kind of defines a shape, but if I hold that a bit closer you can see it kind of gives it that feeling like fur and like fuzziness, because we're drawing a fluffy creature and not a smooth creature. We're not drawing a fish, we're drawing a cat. So we can use lines like that to give us an edge, and that suddenly becomes like an outline, as if you've almost drawn a white outline. But we can use little flick marks like that around a shape, and that gives it a lovely kind of fuzzy feel. So that's what we're going to do with this edge here. So we're not going to outline this in black now, because eventually we can rub all this outline out and we'll have sort of furriness to follow. I'm going to do the furry outline sort of last, because we want to think about the shagginess of the cat. So the fur on the head of the cat and the ears is really, really short. Even unless you're going to do a proper full-on Persian fluffball cat, the lines up here are going to be really quite small. And as they go down, then they might get a bit shaggier. So we can decide how shaggy you want our tabby to be. So just remember that when you're doing your pattern marks, we don't want to fit... Excuse me, let me just mute quickly before I cough. There you go. We don't want to draw this line in here. So we're going to start with some sort of pattern, some sort of like outlines of patterns of striping that we're then going to fill in. So usually cats have this sort of central, almost like spine down the back. Most of their patterns will follow this kind of area. So I'm going to start up on his head and bring a line kind of coming down the middle of that, and then going over the shoulder and stopping at the edge like that. So he's got a sort of line coming through there, and then I'm going to mirror that on the same sort of side, I think, over here. Yeah, so that's sort of... They are a bit symmetrical cats, but we don't have to stick to being completely symmetrical. And then don't forget, what we're doing here is finding areas that we can then fill in with Doodle. So we're defining our areas first. So I think I'm then going to take that one so it starts making an overlap. And then we'll bring one in underneath, sort of coming round like that. So we're starting to see a kind of pattern building up. I don't want to be too symmetrical, like I said, so I'm going to take another one, and this one's going to snake over his back and then over his hip like that. So it's kind of bringing that nice sweep down, and so it's going to come, we're going to make that double again, and it's going to come round, and I'm going to take it to this side of his tail, so he's got like a sort of path sweeping down like that across the back. Then let's think about the head area. I'm going to then break up this in pattern rows, kind of coming round, just a few like stripes coming down the side of his head like that. And then I want to do something similar on this side. It doesn't have to be identical though, but I want to have that same kind of rhythm of the lines moving and describing the head like that. So you've got this sort of nice flow kind of coming round, and maybe leave that one in a kind of leaf shape like that there. So that's that sort of shapes in there. So he's kind of a stripy cat, but a very sort of, you know, suave stripes going through. And when we've got those stripes in here, I think it would be nice then to have almost like something happening underneath that layer. And so we're going to take a line coming through from this side and then bringing out onto the hip like that again. So it's kind of like this nice layering, kind of wrapping feel. And it's now making me think of those mummified cats that they used to find in Egypt, because the cat was obviously a sacred creature, and it was often that the pharaoh's cat got his own pyramid. So mine better not be listening, because he's not getting a pyramid, I tell you. And then I'm going to take another one that's kind of like weaving through here, and again, if you want to get this underlap or overlap feel, bring your line to the where you want it to disappear, and then lift your pen up, mimic, oh look, I've touched it, never mind, we'll sort that out. Mimic drawing across, don't make a mark like I did, and then bring your pen down again, and that gives the feeling that this line is underneath because it's sort of obscured by the ones on top. And so we're going to take that round again, and just the same sort of idea. I've now got another layer kind of coming through like that. So we've got this sort of lovely kind of lacy kind of wrapping around kind of feel. Now with his tail, I'm going to sort of imagine that we're doing like stripes, but can you see how I've just put a curve on that line, and that is also a pattern area, but it's also picking up on this line here, but it's also giving that sense that the tail is a round object, because tails are like sort of tubes really. They don't, they're not, I don't want to say if you cross section they'll be round, because that sounds horrible, but they're round objects, they're not flat ribbons. So all these lines that we're going to put on his tail, I want to give them that sort of curve so that it looks like a bit like sort of like a Christmas candy cane. And I must say that I actually left Kent and went to London for a day out on Friday. I know, it was so exciting. Went on the tube train, but I went because I went to the V&A are having an exhibition of artwork and all about Alice in Wonderland and Alice with the Looking Glass, and they are two books that I was obsessed with as a child, which will probably come as no surprise to anybody. And I spent my life kind of in some way reinventing them for myself, I think. And of course, they had loads of beautiful drawings of the Cheshire Cat. And this is I think what made me think of it was just seeing this cat, and he appears in lots of. And it's a beautiful exhibition. If you do feel brave enough to venture into London, I would thoroughly recommend it. You have to book. It's lovely, and in some ways it's lovely now because you have to book in advance, and then you let so many people in, so you can actually see all the exhibits, and they've got loads of installations and things which are really exciting without too many people. It's actually quite nice. The museum probably doesn't think so because they get less revenue, don't they? But I think it's lovely. Right, so I'm now going to take a final. I want a curved line coming underneath this sort of section here. So I'm going to start it from here, and it's going underneath. So then I'll lift my pen up and just bring. That's Sydney the seagull, isn't he, getting in on the act again? Though I always maintain that all seagulls have to be known as Stephen, which is a terrible joke, but there we go. So we've now got our sort of the areas defined where we're going to start working in. Or we haven't done the ears, have we? So let's have a think about ears. So let's bring, because often they do have a soft edge. So I'm going to bring lines inside. I'm not going to go up to the pencil line at all. These lines are going to be inside the ears. Just some little stripe areas to bring that through. And I'm going to do the outline in the kind of fuzzy marks that we looked at. So that's the one ear kind of in there, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So if I start with a line going up to the middle to the tip, and just draw those up through, and again just put a slight curve in them, and it starts to give them that sort of radar dish feel, which in a way is what cat's ears are. They're a bit like radar, aren't they? Sort of listening out for all the things that might be scuttling about. So what I'm going to try and do is think about where the patterns start and finish, and then sort of use part of the pattern or play with the pattern to get this sort of fuzzy edges, which sounds weird, but it'll make a bit more sense when we actually do it. So let's have a look at getting in some pattern on some of these stripes now, and then seeing how we can get this sort of fuzziness happening. So I'm going to move in a bit closer so we can look at his head in a bit more detail, and we'll start at the top and move down, because again, when we're thinking about the sort of the structure of the cat, the ears on a cat are the sort of the thinnest bit of the cat, really, aren't they? Because they're like thin sort of flaps. So we're going to swap down to, that pen by the way was a 0.1, so I'm going to swap down to if you've got a 0.5 or whatever pen you're using, see if you can go a size smaller, because that will help to get this sense of scale into the creature. And then when we look at his ears, we can see how as these lines come together at the top, they're very close together, don't give us much space, and that's what we want. Because if we sort of like make our patterns follow these guidelines, so as they disappear off into nothing, and as they come down they get a bit bigger, that will help to give this sense of structure and sense of sort of proportion for the cat. So you don't want to try and squeeze giant images into that area. So we're going to start very simply to show you what I mean. I'm just going to do some little tiny circles, you can hardly see them, into that top section, and as the lines get bigger, you just make your circles reach up and fill those lines so they come along and they get larger and larger, and that helps that feeling that they're appropriate for the size of your creature. They're fitting in like that, so you get that feeling. I'm going to come even closer because this is the smallest detail point if I can. Come on, camera. And you can see how I mean. That just helps to keep the sort of pattern. You're trying all the time to keep the pattern in proportion to the part of the animal that you're drawing. And then it adds to the... It's not trying to be realistic, but it's just adding to the feel of the flow of the drawing. And then same up here. So I'm going to miss a line because I'm going to come back to that, and I'm going to do circles again and let them get bigger to fill into that space that I've defined. And so much of really effective patterns like this is just letting your pattern move with different scales and fit into different spaces. So now he's got sort of like attractive spotty kind of ear patterns along there, so I'd like to put a pattern in between those, and I want to make it a bit darker so I want these ones to sort of stick out a bit whiter, so it's sort of like a stripe. So to get it darker, I need to do my patterning closer together. So I'm going to do some snail spirals, and again little tiny ones into that end section, and as they come bigger, the spiral can get a bit bigger. And because they're a spiral and they're sort of part filling in, you're creating a darker effect, and that's giving a nice tonal variation. So, and of course, as it gets bigger, you're just doing more round and rounds on your spiral. And then he's got spirally ears like that, and that's sort of like a slightly darker looking stripe. Let's just see if I can get it. It's so small, it's hard to make the camera focus on it. I just moved it down a little bit, it might come in a bit better. I hope everyone can see that okay. I know it's quite tiny, but this is the smallest bit, I promise you. And then I want to do another sort of pattern on this side, so I can do, if I didn't want to do spirals, I could do a chevron pattern, but again, pack the chevrons in quite close, and they will start to look a bit darker. So, and they're pointing up to the top of the ear in this case, because it's sort of like showing the way that ear is getting smaller and smaller. If you get stuck and you can't fit the whole chevron in, just switch over to turn them into diagonals and get them really close together, and that will start to be a stripe on his ear. Okay, right, now I want to think about this sort of fluffy outline, and so I need to have a pattern on this sort of side of the edge of the ears coming in. So I think we'll do I'm going to do a little, like one of my elongated curlicues that I like doing, that come along and sort of create that edge along there. There we go. And that's just going to get tighter and tighter. Like that. And then to just define that edge, I'm just going to, I've got one of these moments where my eyes have started watering because they're a bit dry. And oh dear, sorry, mascara's just hit my eyeball. I'm just going to do little tiny flicky lines off that pattern, and that's just going to give me, at the moment they're just coming out, but that's just going to give me that sort of soft outline that looks a bit more eerie, a bit more fluffy, like that going round. And on this side I'm going to leave this white for the moment, but I'm just going to follow my pencil line and just do some little bits of fluffiness along that edge, and that will hopefully give that a kind of fluffy feel. So that's got a sort of shaggy ear on that side, and I'm just going to have to wipe my eye a second, if you'll just forgive me, because I'm sitting here trying to draw with one eye closed, and that's never going to work, really, is it? I'm just going to grab a tissue. Oh dear. I think it's when I've had a day of staring at too many intricate things all day long, which I have. Oh, that's better. Right. I'm probably like a panda now. So when I come back on the end, you can all have a good laugh. Right. So then I'm going to do on this side, let's just do the little bit of outline first, leaving that white space there so we can bring all those little hairs flicking around the edge like that. And again on this side here. And if you wanted to do a white on black drawing, this would work in just the same way, because it would look like a sort of nighttime cat. And what's quite nice about it is that looks like the moonlight is kind of lighting up his ear and just sort of catching a bit of ear. So then I've got to do the pattern on this side. We'll come back up to this ear because I want to sort of get down to some of the patterns on the rest of him. Now what I'd quite like to do is take these pattern lines that I've got on the ear. I want to bring them across the back of his head into, so it meets up with this line here. So where they come down to the ear, I'm then going to imagine that line's continuing, but because it's going over the head, they're going to slightly spread out a bit each time. So I can continue those down over him like that. So it's sort of coming there. I don't want to put an outline there. I'll have to make that one darker because I messed that up. And then I'm just going to bring those flicks sort of down. And that sort of like brings the pattern down and continues that kind of layering feel. And if we want to, we can actually continue the pattern down. But of course, as those stripes are now wider apart, we can draw our circles and whatever bigger. And you don't lose that definition. In fact, you get that feeling of that surface slipping into the back of his head. So this one was spirals. So we do some spirals. And another spiral. There we go. And this was a chevron. So I'm also using a 0.1 pen now instead of a 0.5, which automatically gives us a fractionally heavier line. And that really helps to change sort of definition a bit. So that chevron pattern going and disappearing off into there. I think I want to see a little bit of spiral in there. And then there's some circles, just a couple to fit into the top. And these more open spirals are going to fit in, and this one's got to get quite big because there's quite a big space there, so that's going to get quite large and spirally into there, and you can fit them in anyway. But that's, I think it's just a really nice way of bringing that shape in. And now we want to get into the sort of lines, the verticals coming down. I'm going to switch to quite a thick pen because I want to do a complete stripe of black next to those patterns just to give them lots of definition. So I'm using a brush pen. A lot of packs of pens come with a brush nib pen, but any sort of largish nib pen that you feel comfortable using. I find the brush pen, once you get the hang of it, I find them really useful filling in spaces because you can kind of follow a line with its tip and then go back and sweep in the middle. But I'm just going to put a thick black line and then go up to that pencil line, follow it in, and then I can just whiz it in quite quickly like that. And then to get this fluffy effect, that edge where I've got that black stripe coming down, I'm going to then go back with a fine pen and put a little cluster of hairs coming off the end of that, and that's sort of just letting that finish in a kind of fuzzy, fluffy kind of way. Let me move my camera up a little bit, and you can see that just helps to get that sort of fluffy feel coming down. Okay, so I did speak about having some coloured areas. I think what I'm going to do is when we get down to his bottom, he's going to have a ginger tabby patch on his bottom, but we'll get round to that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do slightly bigger patterns coming down. So we've got a nice sweep coming down here. So I'm going to swap to 0.3 or 0.4, something a little bit chunkier. I know people laugh when I say 0.4 millimetre is chunky, but you know, when you've been doing a lot of, you tend to draw with a lot of fine pens, suddenly these quite ordinary looking pens look enormous. So I'm going to then just do a nice simple zigzag. And again, as the shape gets wider, your zigzag can just zigzag up wider to meet it and let it come round. And if the last one goes really big, that doesn't matter. That just helps to that feeling of the movement down through the body. And then I'm going to colour in every other one black again, so it makes it quite dark. And I'm hoping that if I get down here, this bit here is going to be black, and I can continue that black shaggy fur kind of down that side bit as well. So I'm just going to continue doing, I mean, there's two schools of thought with, you know, colouring in. You can sort of, most people, I think, a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, you go around the edge first and fatten that up so you've got a space, and then you can go in much more quickly and fill in the bit because you know the edges are kind of safe, then you've got the edges in quite neatly. So I'm going to do, but you know, everyone may have their own colouring in a space technique. But so once I've got all those squares in, then again I'm going to go back to my point 1 because that's what I was using for the fluffiness, and I can just continue that black shape, just make it go into a little bit of fluffy line work along there, so he's starting to keep fluffy. And then up at the top here, look where it's popping at the top of his head, he wants to have some little sprouts of hair, and they can go right up in the air because, you know, cats usually have that sort of silky bit at the top. And I'm hoping you can see that's sort of starting to give him, although it's a very patterned cat, that little bit of furriness kind of gives it a quite nice sort of reality. So then we're going to go back into my next stripe down. So I think we'll have something curly in this stripe. So I'm going to go back to my point 4, and I'm going to do some of my elongated drop shapes, but I just sort of bring them round and tuck them round like that. So you've got one kind of coming in there and another one, and they're sort of to one side like that. So they come looping round, and this one doesn't get as big as the other one, so they're going to stay very even size like that, coming round. And then because I want to have a sort of dark space here, I think I'm going to colour in between this time, and this is the space we call the negative space. It's like the pattern that's been created by mistake, or sort of not by mistake, but you know, it's not the pattern you've been trying to create, it's the gaps between the pattern you've been trying to create. But if you then colour it in, it becomes like a background for that piece, and it just helps to sort of blend it in, and it's a way of finding a new pattern or bringing out a different emphasis on the pattern. I'm going to colour all of that last bit in black so that I can continue the fluffy line around there. So that bit's all kind of dark in there, and then I can put in his next bit of fluffy pattern like that, just bringing that in. And up the top there, I know he hasn't got black there, but I can just put a few more strands down. I think I'm still going to put some strands just sort of where that edge would come, so that he's not hasn't got a bald patch. Right, and then we've got this line sort of coming around here. And again, we don't have to do massively complicated patterns. We can just do some quite simple lines, just some little horizontal lines across. But as this is going to swing down, we're going to slightly alter the angle of those so they kind of follow that curve going down. And it's just very, just that really simple, just a horizontal line, but just trying to kind of get the gap between each one the same. And again, it doesn't really matter if you don't, but it's just quite a nice thing to focus on. Just seeing if you can get a nice even spread. And then as you come down and you get a little bit wider, the white gap between those lines can just become slightly wider as well. And you can see we're trying to sort of keep it parallel with the sort of imaginary end of that line. But if you go more slanty, it doesn't really matter. But as it gets wider, we're going to make the white gaps a little bit wider each time. And although it's the simplest pattern mark you can make, it's not without its need to concentrate. You know, it's still quite something you've got to focus on to get it to work. Because as we get round to the end, it's going to disappear off and it's going to be quite wide. So then we still get that nice sense of movement from the small at the top swinging down to the larger space at the end, and that just again helps get that flow of pattern across the animal's body. And again, I want to put some fluffy in around that edge, and then I think when I've done it with the fluffy, I'm going to have a momentary squash break. So I'm just going to flick those lines in like that, and that just gives that little softness. And I'm just going to have a quick drink. I'll move it up a little bit because it's got a very short focal lens, this camera, I find. So if I move him up into sort of, there's like one area in front of it that it will get into focus compared to the rest of it. But then you can see, hopefully, where I've got those little sort of fluffy details I hope that's a tiny bit sharper, but it just sort of gives him that softness. Right, okay, I'm just going to quick pause. Right, there we go. It's definitely a warm evening, and there will be the need for squash breaks. Right, now we've got this sort of nice diamond shape that's kind of appeared in amongst these wrappings. So I think it'd be quite nice to make that into a little bit of a feature, almost as if he's got like a sort of a jewel on the back of his neck or something, or at least a pattern that looks quite sort of attractive. It might be quite cool to do one of these weird spirally patterns that you can do. So we'll see if we can achieve that in here. So to do this, what we're going to do is imagine that we're doing a spiral inside this shape. It's going to be a square spiral, and you slightly move your starting point on each layer. So you might want to just watch this because it will make more sense than me talking about it probably. So I'm going to start my pen about 2mm down from that point, and I want to follow that line round, but then I'm going to stop it again about 2mm from that point, and then I'm going to try and copy that curve as close as I can, but again bring it so it stops onto that corner there. And then the same thing here. Sometimes if these are difficult to plot, if you give yourself a little mark on there as a kind of goal point, and then you can bring your line across to that point there, and it starts to create sort of like that shape as if it's slightly moved around. And then the last thing is to join those two up again. So we're going to join those up like that, and then we're going to go round again. But we're going to start on this second line, do a little dot there to help know where you want to start, and then you can put your dot in there to kind of as a destination point, and bring that round like that. And then, you know, same thing over here, and we're just repeating this shape, going smaller and smaller, but you should start to see that you get this slightly sort of twisted look, like a sort of spiral sort of appearing like that in the centre. And we're going to carry on again. So again, we're going to start it up a little bit further in from when we stopped and bring it across. So each time we're slightly moving it, so we're making a sort of diamond shape that's slightly smaller and has also got this sort of twist happening through it like that, and bring that round. So each time, oh god, my outline's falling on me from above. I'll have to move it over. It's the heat has unstuck the masking tape, and so bring it round, and slowly we get smaller and smaller, disappearing off into the smallest shape we can manage, and at the end we're just trying to fit in as much as we can. And then when you look back, you have this sort of like as if you're looking down on a pyramid kind of feel, you know, somewhere between a pyramid and a spider web maybe. And if you wanted to, you could go back and you could do some shading into that, but we can leave that for now. But I quite like that. I think it looks quite sort of a bit mystical for Mr. Cat, as the cats do have this association with sort of magic and wonderment. So we then got this big sweep that's going to come round to his sort of bottom end as well. So I think to consider this one, we're going to have to pull out a bit and think about what we're going to do. I think what would be quite nice is to bring some more lines, dividing that up maybe into sort of sections. Maybe just one coming through, swizzle that along and up, and then bring it up into, so it disappears off into that area there. And I'm going to do a second line just sort of echoing that one, but just following that outer edge again, and dropping into there like that. So I've got some sort of areas to play with. And then I'm going to give myself an S spiral in here, or a backward sort of S shape, and then we can build some spirals kind of coming off that as a kind of starting point. So once I've got that S, that's going to be the basis for my spirals, and I'm going to start by doing some of those sort of nice teardrop shapes again. So they're going to bunch along kind of following that edge. Maybe do one with a bit more of a curl on it, but in like a sort of fan shape to begin with. So they're just starting off round there, and then I can bring some smaller ones kind of coming off around there. They have quite a nice sort of patterny, like feathery kind of feel, and I do use them quite a lot because they're quite effective, but they're good to practice because they're really useful for creating these sort of things. And then on this side I can put a bit more of a curl in, and I can take them right across to the edge there. So by putting a bit more of a spiral curl onto that edge, and sort of like almost like a chin, I always think of, or a little sort of face coming around, it just makes them slightly different from the ones on that side. And then I can bring these up going longer, and then they can travel up to this way, and they can get smaller and disappear out. So we've got like a nice sort of almost like a plume kind of happening here, and then I can put some more in to bring that up. And then we've got this top curl here, so we can put some coming in, just getting smaller kind of round there, and that's quite a nice good fun one to do. And I think we can bring some, because we've got this curl here, we can bring them into his tail section just a little bit as well, so they're kind of linked together, and maybe take them up around there. So now he's got like a sort of fern leaf or a kind of frond appearing up round here. And we've got to think about this sort of backgrounding area in here, because we don't want to sort of completely lose this nice frond effect. So I'm going to put a couple of circles in to fill out some of these sort of holes around here. And then I want to put, I've got this lovely thin line here, so I want to put like a little, I want to make that quite dark. And again, I think I'm going to start off by getting my brush pen, and just the very top, very thin section, I'm going to make it a bit more solid. So I'm just colouring that in just to give it a really strong feel as it comes round. And I'm going to take it round to about here, so I'm going to colour round to there, just making that into a sweep of complete black pen work, like that. And then as I come where it's just slightly opening up a little bit, I'm going to put a very close together pattern in so that I can blend it in. So to begin with, I might just do some little circles and keep them really go around a couple of times so you've got hardly any white showing, so it blends into that black. And then as that gets a bit wider, you can draw your circles in, and again it's like fitting in little tiny pearls in a row. So it's quite an elegant way of working and doing that. So we're going to come down, and as they come down they can get rounder and fit into that space and create this sort of, again, this nice sort of feel of movement coming through the animal. So we can just make that circles all the way down to the end, and it's just sneaking onto his tail like that. So that's quite a nice sweep going through there. But we've got to finish this one here, and I don't want to make this too dark, but I'm also thinking here we were going to have our sort of tabby patch in as well, weren't we? So I think I'm just going to do, what I want when I'm doing this, what I'm going to imagine is that there's like an invisible line kind of in this section here, because I want the patterns on here to go from black and then suddenly become the sort of tabby pattern to make it a bit sort of different. So if you're not sure how to handle that, you might just want to make life a little bit easier for yourself and draw a patch in, like so we say, right, that's going to be ginger, you know, or brown or something in this bit, and then maybe I can say, right, okay, I'm going to then reflect it as well by having a bit of ginger on this side. So I've sort of got two borders to work into. So anything I draw, though I know I've got black lines in here, I don't think that matters too much. So anything I draw in this section, I'm going to use a sepia pen. So I've got some brown sepia fine liners. You could use a bright orange if you wanted to make him like a proper ginge, you know, or you could use a chocolate brown. You could use a grey pen just to get a sort of subtle difference. So to show you how that's going to work, we'll do this stripe that's going from that sort of the black pen area into this sort of browny area up here. So we'll come back and do this bit when I've thought about what we're going to do in the background of my mind while I'm working. Right, so I'm going to start off with the black pen. So I'm going to subdivide this line again, a little bit like we did with the one on top. So I'm going to come down and then I'm going to bring it down, and where that pencil mark is, I just stop like that. And then I'm going to take my brown line and continue it on, but as if nothing had happened. And that means that this section here of the fluffiness, this edge here, is all going to be little ginger or brown lines like that coming down. And I can do that bit now. I can fill those. And you can see I'm doing them slightly longer because they tend to have shaggier fur on their lower halves, because that's where my line is coming around here. So I can see my line comes all the way down to here. So I know I'm going to put fluffiness in ginger all the way along like that. But when I get to this little bit down by his tail, that's going to be black again because that's in the black and white zone like that. And then again, same again up here, just hits that line and it's going to go. And with these lines, I want them to be pointing a little bit downwards, so I can put all those in knowing that's where they're going to go, because you'll find that where his haunches are here, they slightly stick out differently to where this sort of flank is, because you've got two different surfaces kind of seen from different angles. So if I continue this line again, I want to do another line to subdivide this sweep. So I'm going to bring my line through just the same, and then underneath bring it out again, and where it hits, swap over to the brown pen and bring that brown colour in like that. So let's see how it's going to work with a pattern. So to keep it simple for ourselves, we'll do the middle section of this in a fairly standard sort of chevron pattern. So we're going to choose the middle one of these, and with your chevrons, make sure that they're pointing downwards, because that again is going to go in the right direction for the growth pattern on the fur and the way that he's put together. And again, as the lines get further apart, your chevron or V shapes are going to get a little bit larger and you're going to see more white. So down he comes, and again just going to disappear under that on the layering pattern on top, and then the chevron pops out underneath. I'm not going to try and make you calculate whether it should be a point or a V as you come out, but as you hit that line you stop with the black pen, and so you can see I've just left a little I haven't finished that chevron because its nose or its point is coming into the ginger zone like that, and then I can continue that down through his body, and again pointing down and sort of aiming for the middle of that stripe, and as it gets round there it gets quite wide, but you can see that just brings that colour in into that area there, and just get that nice sort of transition. And so that's what we're going to do. So if we wanted to do a big sweep of colour alongside that, same deal would apply. So we can get our black brush pen, or the thick, whatever thick black pen you're using, and colour this section in. Maybe I should have done this first because it probably make it a lot easier to see what I was going on about, but anyway. Bring this side in. We know that bit's definitely going to be black. So we just colour that all in. And then it's going to pop underneath and come out again on the other side. So we just colour that section in. Like that. There we go. And then that next bit is going to be in the ginger colour. Now, of course, annoyingly, I don't have a sort of sepia russet brush pen. So if that's the case, what I probably would do would be lots of lines rather than trying to sort of shade it in like as if I was colouring with a felt tip. I'd probably translate that into lines instead. If you've got a felt tip that's the right colour, that's great. You can go back and use that. If you're using like a chunkier nib anyway, it won't take as long. But I think if you've only got the fine liners left, it never quite works, I think, just to start scribbling and colouring it in. It sort of looks a bit mucky. So if you just do, and it doesn't matter with these lines if they overlap or not. In fact, you kind of want them to. But just filling in long sweeps, continuing that shape down. And if a little bit of white is left, it doesn't really look, it just looks like you meant it, because it just slightly gives that a lighter kind of approach. But you can sort of start going through, and you can get most of it coloured in if you're doing it with a fine liner. And again, bring it off into that fluffy bit at the end. And you might decide to go back and do the chevrons in alternate ginger and black as well, seeing how we go. So that's starting to get that, you can start to see that patch is now developing, and we can really see that standing out. So I think let's try and do one of our sort of teardrop florally kind of feel on this side. So we're going to bring them down. So starting off really tiny little elongated teardrops. And that's where I went over the line that I didn't want to, so it's going to disappear now by magic. There we go. And then I'm going to start making them a bit longer and a bit more obvious. This is one that I think will benefit from having the negative spaces sort of coloured in, because it will help to define them. So then we bring teardrops down, and I think I'll put one going in that way. And then this is the only tricky bit, because you just got to bring it up to hit that line, and then take the pen off and go back into the sepia colour just at that line there, because now we've gone into ginger cat territory. And I've always been a proud owner of British bicolours for years, usually ones that just turned up and moved in on me, but I've always been a big fan of the old Mogs. Right, and then again, if you wanted to colour in a little bit of the negative space in between, and that just starts to help those shapes pop out a bit more and helps define your patterns. And then once you go into across the dividing line again, you can switch back to the black fine liner and just come in and fill in those spaces to make that pattern continue through. And of course you've got another ginger patch on the other side, and if we get onto that we'll cover that as well, but we'll sort of do one side and then we'll do the other, because then you've seen us sort of guiding through all that the cat has to offer, and you've had a go at it once, and you can then go back and sort of decide what you want to do with the other sides. So those are those two coming in there now. Right, so I think it'd be quite nice to continue this sort of like two colours down onto his tail zone. So I think we might do that, because then it really will have that sort of lovely stripy tail feel. I do like a stripy cat tail. I think if I could have a tail, and believe me, when I was a child, I wanted a tail so badly. I used to make them out of bits of leftover wool and stuff. I would definitely have a stripy tail. I think the stripy tail would be awesome. Right, so I want to put a shape in here, it's got a nice sort of triangle. So it'd be nice to get kind of floral or sort of maybe sideways kind of flower pattern. So I'm going to start in this ginger corner here. So I'm just going to do a little half moon shape, and then do some lines coming down into that corner point. And again, similar to when using black, it just sort of helps to give that a bit more definition. And then I'm going to do some dinosaur bumps following along that curved top. And that's starting to be something that might develop into a bigger pattern. And then this is going to be the most difficult bit, because you've got this sort of transition line, the sort of ginger zone line. So I'm going to have to sort of, if I start on the side where I'm all in the ginger, and I'm going to do some sort of bigger bumps, and then I know when that comes off, I've got to take my pen off, grab my black pen, continue that line up into that sort of black and white zone, and probably to make life easier for myself, not let it drop back down again. So that's just sort of like a little two-tone transformation. And then once I've got that bit in, I can do another line of petals kind of on top, and I think that's mostly going to be in the black and white sort of bit, like a little cloudy petal just sort of through there. And then I'm going to put a few little shading lines along that edge just to help give that definition. But of course it's going to hit, and this is going to be a tricky bit because I'm going to have to do them in ginger and stop them at that line like that, so they're going in there. And then to sort of finish it off, I need to get black to my black pen and just continue those lines up into the monochrome zone like that. I think it's fiddly, but I think it's worth it because it just really helps to kind of keep that balance that we've got going. And so that's a nice sort of florally pattern in there. So now we've got this bit here. So I think in the ginger zone again, which is a phrase I use a lot apparently. My son's a ginger, so I'll have to call his bedroom the ginger zone from now on. So I'm just going to put some lines in, and then maybe we'll break them up later into some smaller pattern, but I'm just going to subdivide those into sort of little pattern lines. And again, when that hits the border, we stop in the ginger pen and we go across to the black. Take that through like that. So that's like a little, and then I can think of a pattern that will fit into those little spaces in here. So I've got a nice triangle. So again, if we put some sort of teardrops in and maybe kind of build them up from that centre, sort of looping up, getting bigger and bigger like that. And then same with this one, sort of 2 in, and then just exaggerate that shape over and over. And this one I'm going to go downwards, so 2 little side-by-side petals or teardrops, and then do another one on top to exaggerate and exaggerate, and that sort of. And then this one, I think I'm going to take it from, I want to start at a pointy end with it, so it's back to the black pen and into that corner, going bump and bump, and where it hits the line, stop, and back into the ginger pen, and over and over like that, moving up. Okay, so that's sort of getting again that sort of transition shape in. And just this last section in here, I'm going to bring those coming in from that corner, and we'll do the same thing. As soon as that line hits my border, I'm just going to stop it and continue the rest, and then I'm going to come back in with my sepia pen and just echo that shape through, but into this sort of sepia zone like that, and that just starts to really kind of get that to fill out. And we've got one last sort of bit, well, there's a bit up there, but this sort of last section in here to do. So it'd be quite nice, I think, to get some quite sort of dense colour in. So I'm going to pick a point somewhere on this side here, and I'm going to do some fan lines that come out, and we'll take them into that dark zone, but I'm just going to fan them out from that point. Do this ginger zone first, bringing that out, and then letting it tuck under that one on top like that, and it gets quite sort of solid colour wise. And then I think, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick a spot here and sort of bring those lines up. I'm just going to let them stop at that pencil line, and then I'm going to go back and continue them with the sepia pen. But I'm going to do this side in first, and just take that off there, and then swap back to my pen and continue those lines to meet that border line up there. like that. So that's just given that kind of feel, getting that feel into that section. Right, so let's have a look. That's really starting to stand out more, that kind of patch of colour. I think looking at this now, I think this background on this piece here at least, I think I'd like to make that quite dark. And maybe that here, but I don't want to make it dark into here because then it'll just fade into this dark line we've got going on. So I'm going to black out, as it were, these sections here, here and here. And then this one, as we go back up, we'll do a pattern so that it's not all black, and therefore it won't just disappear in. I'm just going to have a momentary drink break, and so I'm just going to mute. There we go. Don't want to hear me gulping. Right, so I'm going to come in my brush pen, and I want to make this nice floral design really stand out. So I'm going to go in and just colour in around those shapes and make them really pop out against their background. And I think sometimes really delicate shapes on a black background are really stunning. So I'm just using the tip of the brush pen to come in between those sort of triangles and then follow that line up. And obviously you could go and use a grey tone pen or put a third colour into the cat. That's not a problem at all if you've got something handy that you might want to try doing that with. I think it just needs, this sort of shape works really well with it against a background. So I just put that in there. You can see it's really starting to stand out. It looks beautifully designed, you know, like really sort of a lovely sort of design feature. And then I've got these little shapes here, so I'm just going to go in between. Hope you can, if I move my hand, you can still see all right. I'm just going to go in between those little triangles to pop the negative space out. And there we go. So that's just those little in to bring that in. I'm going to do my fluffiness on his fluffy bottom. These ones on the bottom, by the way, lower down, I think they can come quite, they're going to be pointing downwards when they grow, and they can be quite long and fluffy because they do tend to have more shagginess happening down on the bottom. And I'm just going to go back and get a little bit of dark under that curl, but that's just sort of, so on that side we can have quite shaggy. And of course, you know, you can do these sort of eyelash shapes as long as you want to, and the longer you do them, the shaggier a moggy you've got. You don't really get shaggy moggy stories, do you? You get shaggy doggy stories, but yours can be a shaggy moggy. And let's bring that darkness in there. There we go. Okay, so that's got that pattern really popping out, and I think I'm going to take that right down onto this tail section. And I know I could put more pattern into that, but I think actually it's going to look quite nice and dramatic just to bring that down and introduce that area into the tail. And again, so I can, once you've done the edge, you can then sort of like much more quickly colour that in down to that edge. And still with the tail fluffy edge, when you put it in, the hairs now will be going down again following that growth pattern, because cats have tails a bit like bottle brushes. So all the fur is always pointing towards the tip of the tail. And it can be as long and shaggy as you feel like your cat being. So again, that sort of brings that round onto there. Right, so this is now a lovely, nice, dramatic piece of pattern. Just coming up a little bit to look at this section above, because I said we don't want to make this completely black because we'll just blend it into that line and we'll kind of lose the point of it. So instead of doing, I'm going to do a little, with a fine pen, do like a little curve of black on top of that pattern just to keep that piece going. And then, because I've got a curved line there, I'm just going to put like a bracket shape, and I'm going to do little curved brackets going up, and they're still sort of pointing downwards because the ends are pointing down, and the sort of middle of the bracket is pointing up, and I think that still works fine with the whole flow of the cat. And they're going to come up into his top section. And again, you still want to keep a little bit of white between them, but they can still get quite close together, but it'll be enough just to have a little echo of the space between to make it stand out from the black line that's next to it. So, and as you come up, you might want to flatten your curve and it just become little verticals, or horizontals, actually not verticals, horizontals, coming across like that. And we're just going to come all the way up. I don't want to completely disappear in, because I do want there to be a difference between those two edges. But they're going to be nice and rhythmic. And there we go. So that's just allowed that to sort of fade into this one down here, but it hasn't, it's got a lot of presence, but it's not just disappearing. Right, so if we come down onto his tail section, we'll do a bit of the tail and then we can pop up and do some other bits. So this bit, we sort of decided, didn't we, that we're going to do this in a sort of orange pattern or a sepia pattern. So he's got like a stripy, he's what my grandmother would have called a Jericho cat, because one that has a coat of many colours. So we've then got this sort of section here. So I think we want a pattern that maybe is following these kind of curved stripes. So I think this might be a case of breaking this up again into lines kind of going that we can then fill with a pattern. So let's make some smaller divisions in there, and then we can sort of fill, and they can still be quite simple patterns. They don't have to be anything wildly complicated, but you know, we can do the triangle kind of bumps pattern. Then we can do some circles in here, which are quite a good infill because they're so useful. Circles are useful. That's my contribution to mathematics tonight. Circles are useful, but they do fill in because they can put a nice level of tone in as well. And then we can do, if you do one way, we can do 2 stripes or 3 stripes going one way, and then a few stripes going the other way, and then back to that first way, and that sort of has like a woven effect, you know, a bit like sort of plaiting in some way, coming round. And again, I quite like these sort of very intricate, these banded kind of look. They've got that feeling again of sort of like tribal tattoos. And then we can do some little half moon bumps. Again, they're following this line around, and the lines are a bit more even space, so they have less variation off the parallel. So they're just going to follow these nice sort of stripy patterns coming round, and we can put a teardrop in between those bumps, kind of coming up like that, coming round, and then maybe on this last stripe here, if you do like a sort of triangle shape, but you exaggerate it so it's much more like a V shape, and then you imagine you've got those edges there, you can then bring that into a sort of triangle, and then that comes round in a sort of triangle in that kind of way. So they've just got a bit more sort of space to them. And if you want to make a bit more of that kind of pattern, this is where you can do a bit of shading. So you can just with a little vertical line use like a cross hatching or a hatching line coming through like that, and you suddenly get like a sort of harlequin pattern on there. And then maybe this one needs to be broken up a bit more, so maybe we can do a negative space thing again and colour in between each one. So we've now got this nice stripy band of pattern spiralling round his tail, and we're going to repeat or do similar kind of patterns on each of these sort of ginger sections. And again, as it comes off the edge, flick your lines down and they become, and as it comes around, remember they're always pointing towards the tip of the tail. So if you kind of imagine that sort of like magnetically pulling them round, that's the way that they're going. They're always going down that tail towards the end, the tip. And I'm just going to put a few more black ones into that section. And what I'm going to try and do is find, if I can, though I might not manage it, find an eraser so I want to take out some of the pencil so we can really see the impact of that fluffiness. There is an eraser on the end of this pencil. I think no, I'm not going to touch it because it's got that you know, you get pencil erasers and they're absolutely horrible and they just like put a grey smudge of everything you've just done. It's an evil-natured eraser like one of those, so I'll leave that, but I will go try and find one. I don't want to take up time looking for an eraser, but I'd like to send you this. I'll rub all these pencil lines off before I scan it so you can see a bit more without that pencil, because it gives it such a nice delicate feel. So then we've got to think what we're going to do for the black section of his tail, or the sort of the monochrome. I think it'd be quite nice to do something that relates to this florally kind of spiral pattern. Doesn't have to be exactly the same, but I think I want to do something with quite a heavy black background in it, because I think that will be really, it'll visually link it to this section. Hang on, I'll get the right pen in a minute. Where's my point? Right, so I'm going to go for point 1. And I'll start with some teardrop spirals, like flowers, but they're going to be more like flowers coming out of a central point. But just going to see like a sort of fan of them on there, and then maybe a couple of nice sort of fat round circles like that, and a couple of the sort of disappearing around. Maybe, I'm not sure about that one, that doesn't look like it's in quite the right place now, but I'll turn that into a sort of weird spiral as if it's kind of overlapping. There we go, that's better. And then maybe like a half a circle as if it's popped underneath, like a bit of polka dot kind of happening, and a quarter circle kind of in there. And then if we then colour that in with our brush pen, or whichever pen we're using for backgrounding, I think it will really hopefully visually link with that sort of section on the bottom, or his lower back. And so you're sort of definitely connecting the two. And again, it gives it a kind of a rhythm and a linkage, and it means that you can see it as being part of the same piece quite easily. So let's take that round, and then I'm just going to put that slightly in there. You can see how that sort of, it's lovely sort of linking through, and then again I can put my hairy bits in. And where it's white, just follow that pencil line, so the heat's making all the masking tape peel off. Follow that pencil line, and when you rub it out, the furry bits will just be there left to define that edge and give it, you'll see the form of the cat, but it'll just still have that lovely kind of light feel. And there we go, so you bring those round. Right, so let's take a step back and decide on which bit we want to look at in our last sort of 10 minutes or so, because time flies when you're doing a doodle. Right, so there we go. So we are getting, I think these are really nice. I think they're really starting to show this, you know, you feel that you can stroke them down and they sort of have this sort of furry quality. I've got another sepia patch kind of in here, so we could put that in to see what that looks like. We've got quite a big area here, and I think that's going to be, because it's got the sepia line kind of going through it, that's going to be quite an interesting one to see what we're going to do with that. So let's do that bit next. So it'd be nice to have a sort of surface pattern. I'm thinking that maybe we should do something a bit like this, again, this sort of black background, because I'm really liking the way this is linking together. So if it came into this section here, it would sort of bring it all the way through the cat, and I might be tempted to add some more of it kind of up here. But we've got this ginger piece to work with, haven't we? So I can start off in the monochrome, and let's do some, I want to imagine there's a spiral kind of coming through here. If it's going to be tricky, I can draw it in first, but again I must remember that when I hit that line I stop on the black pen and pick up my ginger and continue it into that patch there. So that's given me my sort of guideline that I can use to then draw these teardrop shapes from. So we can bring it off the end and just gather some in around like that, and then they just sort of follow that, and you've got somewhere to sort of hang. If you get a gap like that, I just put a circle in, the ever useful circle, and I'm just stopping them again at that line there, I'm going to put a little one into that corner, and then let's have some coming up from this edge. Like that, and stop that edge there, and then they're going to come into ginger pen area like that, and then they can start to curl up and round, so that pattern's continuing. And then we can bring those shapes up and we can link them through. So we've now got that sort of floral pattern happening all the way up. And maybe here we could do a circle that crosses the boundaries. So we do a ginger outline there and a black outline that's going to come in round there. And I think that will do. And then we want to go with the brush pen, and I'm going to use the ginger pen a bit more like a colouring pen. Again, I still think it works better just to do with these fine line pens, just to do like some close together line work and just let that fill in, and then flick off into the fuzzy outline. That's it. And then with the small spaces you can sort of just colour in with that fine liner, because you haven't got too much space to do. I think sometimes if you just try and colour a big area in fine liner, you get sort of too many, it's almost like scratches of colour, because it's such an intense nib. It doesn't give you a smoother finish as the sort of brush nib or a felt tip pen would. Whereas I find that the vertical line work is more, blends better. So that's given that sort of side, and then I can go to my brush pen. And oh no, that's not a brush pen. Where's my brush pen? Oh, there we go. And create this dark background on this side. And it's just following that. Oh, I've got a black line here. Now, I should have been aware of that, but if you get a situation where you suddenly you can decide, do you blend it into it, or you can leave a white outline and then colour up to that, so you do like a quick second outline in. That's quite a good way of getting out of a hole that you did not foresee, like that. So you just leave a little tiny margin of white, and that again has that feeling of one piece fitting over it, travelling over the top of another. And then I can just fill in these few little triangles, and round we go. And of course, you know, you can have loads of fun with your cat. You could do a fantastic psychedelic cat with all sorts of crazy patterns going, or you could go back and really reference Alice in Wonderland, and he could become a Cheshire cat in the sort of Tim Burton-y style, in sort of purple and pink, isn't he? Those on the Disney has him in those sort of colours. Of course, the original illustrations, as I can attest, were black and white, so he could be any colour you like, really. But there we go. So that's you can just see that lovely sort of division coming into there. And again, up here, it's going to happen again up here, or wherever you've decided to put your second sort of gingery patch into. Right, okay, so I think we've got most of the main areas sort of done. So, as in we've done one version of it. We've got this section down here, which I think is quite an unusual shape. So we could just quickly think about doing that. This nice sort of bit sliding down here, and again it's going into that patch zone. So I can take I'm going to do like a chevron, but I'm going to put a wobble in the chevron so it's not as geometric as previously, and then I think that's quite nice. And you sort of like echo those lines as much as you can, and you start getting a nice rhythm or a kind of ripple happening through the surface. Like that, just sort of moving down. And it's also, by using that sort of slightly ripply line, it has a feeling again of a bit like fur, because it has that sort of quality to it, and it blends off into that edge quite nicely. And we can do some overlapping, a little bit like this. We did a sort of straighter version in the ginger tail, but we can do a wobblier version. Nothing wrong with a bit of wobble. Coming down, and again, stop it at that border point and bring out your sepia pen, and then just continue it off into that area as a sort of final piece sort of coming through. And again, it's got that sort of plaited feel, it's got a feel a bit like furriness, but it works quite nicely all the way through. And that's finished off that sort of gingery section there. And then I was saying we've got this sort of these sort of little triangle bits sort of in between, and I would think about doing those in this sort of floral pattern on a background kind of feel, because I just feel it would then link these areas together. So we've got a small space like this here. You might put in a little fan-shaped flourish, all kind of coming round off that point like that, and then you can just go back in and do that background, and you can see how by doing that you're sort of linking all these areas together. You're not sort of creating a polka dot or a tartan effect, but it does give that sort of, it blends that pattern together, it gives it a kind of rhythm, and your eye will follow those areas up through the cat. So maybe finally I would put an area of that up on his head to bring that up into this area here. So I might do it here as well, actually, I think. Well, I'll see. I'm going to do it up here for certain. So if I put in my spiral line, and then I can generate my pattern off that with these sort of swirling round, getting smaller, and then these ones are going to be coming off in a fan, and there, and then this one coming up and round and over the top and just coming out like that. And then when I come back in and do that, I can just fill in those little triangles and we can just see that sort of black background pattern going through the whole of the cat, and it kind of, as I said, it links it together, it gives it a rhythm. And I've just got a few little hairs coming off the top, and I think it would be quite nice to bring a hint of this sepia colour into his ears at the top as well, to make him a proper Jericho cat. So we can do, I've got black hairs there so I can't do that. Oh, we could do the insides, couldn't we? We could do those ones. So I can do some circles in the same sort of way, getting larger, just down a couple of stripes of that ear, this ear, and just take those lines larger there, and the same with this one. And obviously, like all of our sessions, we never have time to, I was thinking, oh, we're going to get this done so quickly tonight, and then we get really into it and we do a good job, and then there's always, you know, but what's lovely about that is that you can now go away and work on your own cats, and when you've done them, send them through to me, and I can see all your different many coloured cats coming through. And so there we go. That's the start of a very beautiful tabby or Jericho cat and Doodle cat. And as I said, if you get really into them, you could do a whole row of Doodle cats with their tails dangling down at different angles. And somewhere up here would be a bird, I think, that they're all watching, as the way cats do. And there we go. There is our lovely Doodle tabby.